Welcome to the Mars in the Fort video. Now, apparently there's nobody here, but we will start in just a minute. I had scheduled this video and I had rescheduled this video like twice because I found myself occupied. But hi, Lady D, and hello, Rishikesh. Okay, new person in the chat that I'm not familiar with. But alright, let's begin. Let's begin with the first paragraph of Mars in the fourth. So, Mars as the Karaka of the third house of expression forces the expression of any house it sits in. The fourth is the most private house, filled with our private thoughts, emotions, contemplations, and it's also related to intimacy. But when Mars enters into this house, the individual is an oversharer because he is constantly vomiting his inner world everywhere he or she goes. Their deepest traumas are known to everyone because at any given opportunity they reveal themselves. With little provocation, they will tell you their deepest, darkest secrets, their greatest fears, and their wildest dreams. This is a common position for a reality television star or a YouTuber that does story times because they are rather shameless. It is a position that can produce a very honest person because they have very little guile. Mars is a planet that causes scandal, and so by overly revealing one's deepest thoughts, one calls a great deal of attention to oneself. One is open and honest about who one likes and who one hates as well. This is how Mars behaves for the most part, but of course there's various exceptions because when Mars is like exalted, Mars does not quite behave this way. For example, when it is more tamed and more controlled, Mars in the fourth can make someone who loves to journal, loves to write poetry. They are always expressing their deepest thoughts, but the more cautious among them are selective of where they place these thoughts. Mars in the fourth is also a position of great self-awareness. Whereas the average person either conceals their own thoughts and feelings or is ignorant of them, because Mars in the fourth is always forcing the expression of this house, the native, through talking about their feelings or writing about their feelings, discovers themselves in a deep and clear-sighted way. They tend to have a more lucid understanding of their own motivations to do certain things. They tend to be very brave to confront their own traumas. Hello, Tale. Oh, I won't even try to pronounce this name. Yes, you can interpret this from the ascendant and also from the moon, because for the most part, many astrologers consider from the moon to be just as relevant. No, you have not missed much. And thank you so much for joining. Thank you to all four of you for joining. All right, let's continue. In the beginning stages of their lives, they can feel rather unstable because the beginning stages of confronting yourself to your own inner demons is always a challenge and always rocky. Mars in the fourth at a young age can suffer from dramatic emotional outbursts, great anxiety, can be easily irritable and express a lot of deep-seated anger that they struggle to resolve. They can cry spontaneously. They are overall very neurotic and very dramatic because unlike the average person that hides his own issues and runs away from his own inner demons, the Mars in the fourth gives expression to all things hidden in the fourth house, as the fourth is the most hidden house, relating also to our subconscious. The fourth house relates to our shadow self, our subconscious, and also to all of our repressed emotions and identities. Mars once again forces an awareness of all these things, forces one to confront themselves with these realities and then to integrate them. Naturally, displacement is one that would be good at shadow work. Because Mars in the fourth forces the expression of one's deepest emotions, it is also related to psychosomatic conditions. One refers to something as psychosomatic when deep emotions start to literally manifest themselves physically in the form of symptoms. Okay, I do not know what I just wrote over here. In the form of, yes, when they start to reflect themselves physically. In the form of illnesses. I think that's what I was trying to write. In the form of illnesses. Like, for instance, intense anxiety, which is an emotion, can reflect itself in chronic dry throats, which is a physical symptom. Intense stress and discomfort, which is an emotion, can lead to acne, high blood pressure, asthma, etc., which are physical symptoms. This is especially the case if one were to try to force oneself to not express one's emotions, if one were to repress one's emotions, or if one were to otherwise neglect one's emotional self. So I think some of you are very familiar with this idea. This idea that emotions and things that linger in our subconscious and our traumas, if we do not deal with them head on, they can sometimes become so powerful, so repressed, but so powerful, they start to manifest themselves in just such weird and odd ways. You know what I mean? You could be an adult who has never had acne in their life, but for some reason, all of a sudden, you start having adult acne. And you don't even know why. You go to the doctor, you don't know why. They try to give you an explanation. They try to prescribe you different things, but nothing works. Until one day you realize, oh, wait a second, this acne is as a result of some unresolved childhood trauma that, and something in my current life is triggering that. And now since it's been triggered, it's no longer going back down. And so now I'm in a place in my life where I have to deal with that same childhood trauma that I've been running away from. Because if I don't, I'm gonna stay with acne for the rest of my life or something like that. You know, various such conditions, various such situations. Even beyond psychosomatic conditions, there's also the phenomenon of course, physiognomy, right? How our deep emotions, when they go unresolved, can, in ways that we don't even expect, even affect literally the formology of our face. You know, when you look at wrinkles, for example, if you study face reading, Chinese face reading, different wrinkles mean different things. So you see over here, for example, this old lady image. I think you guys can see it. See these wrinkles going down like this? According to face reading, whenever wrinkles go down like this, it's sadness. It suggests that somebody has extracted a lot of sadness from their life experiences to such an extent that it's literally carved into your face. And when they go upward like this, it's happiness. It suggests somebody has extracted the juice of joy from life so well that it's literally carved into your face, you know. Not all wrinkles are necessarily bad, even though like in the Western world, they treat all wrinkles as a bad thing, you know, to the point where we inject things to literally paralyze our face, which quite literally also has an effect on our emotions, right? Because the mind and the body are connected. And so when you freeze the face with Botox, you are literally freezing also your emotions, because it's like the neural pathways, if you will, that connect that emotion to that facial expression. If you paralyze the literal ability to express that emotion, you're also paralyzing that actual emotion. So, and I do believe that there have been studies that have suggested this, right? That like people who get a lot of Botox, literally their ability to experience empathy, literally their ability to experience happiness, literally their ability to experience all emotions is affected, is weakens, right? So yeah, different wrinkles mean different things. Let's see if we can find something else over here. Something else. Wrinkles are not something that I really study all that much in face reading. So you see the horizontal lines over here in the head. This is supposed to be a sign of somebody who has thought very, very deeply over the course of their lives. Somebody who's thought very, very deeply. Let's see other wrinkles that I can find and identify here. Okay, you see these wrinkles. Let me even open this image over here. Let's see if I can. All right, you see these vertical wrinkles coming down like this? In Chinese face reading, especially when there's a single line coming down like this, it is supposed to represent internalized anger. Somebody who spent too much of their lives being angry, to such an extent that it's carved themselves on the face. This lady does not have the mouth. These nasal labial folds are actually supposed to be a good thing because they're supposed to represent purpose. So in any case, when you are too emotionally expressive and when you're expressing too many, not necessarily the most positive emotions, that also marks your face. And so Mars is connected to psychosomatic conditions, like if you repress your emotions, those emotions can express themselves physically in ways that you don't expect. But because Mars in the fourth and even Mars in the first can be so expressive, it can also create other types of wrinkles as well. Now, the great thing about Mars is that Mars is almost like an exorcist, you know what I mean? Whenever Mars is sitting in the first house or sitting in the fourth house, it will go down to all of your ugliest childhood traumas and it will like expel those demons because Mars is always exposing the things that are in the dark and confronting those things. You know what I mean? So the great thing about it, it's one of the reasons why Mars is also related to youthfulness, because if you're constantly destroying those inner demons, they're not going to affect you in psychosomatic ways that you can't control. So yeah. Hello, Gunmetal Crow. Heavenly Sims, hello. Oh, it's okay. Okay, that's interesting. Do you have Mars in the fourth? I don't know what a squid is supposed to represent, but thank you very much for the squid. Very sorry to hear that. And yes, that's also one of the significations of both Mars in the fourth and Ketu in the second. Hi, Azrae. Oh, okay, thank you. All right, let us continue. Where are we? Over time, the Mars in the fourth individual can arrive at a level of unique emotional resilience, as little can shake them and little can rock them. Since they have done the shadow work of unearthing everything deep, dark, and forgotten or neglected, now whenever they face the external world and its various events, they are no longer destroyed by them. A weak fourth house makes the individual easily destroyed by the external world. But a strong fourth house is related to the ability to endure the worst that the outside world throws at you. Of course, this position at its most negative can suggest battles with one's mother, battles with one's family, but it can also lead to an eventual reconciling of all deep-seated familial issues. This position can make a very brave individual. The fourth is the darkest house, relating to our shadow self again. Someone who is capable of confronting and wrestling their own demons would also be good at confronting and wrestling other people's demons. They would make great counselors, psychologists, but also people who deal with difficult things like drug addicts or the like, because they are not intimidated by the darker, scarier aspects of the human psyche. Mars in the fourth can also make a fighter, a martial artist, a wrestler, because that same ability to psychologically confront themselves and other people also translates into a physical ability to confront other people as well. They aren't afraid of either psychological demons or physical demons. All right, so Mars in the fourth. You might think that it is Mars in the third or Mars in the sixth house that would make somebody who is a fighter or a wrestler. Mars in the third might even do that, but Mars in the sixth doesn't do that. You want to know why? Mars is a malefic. And malefics, fundamentally, all malefics, they reduce and minimize all the significations of a house. And so, if the sixth house is traditionally the house of battles, if Mars goes into the sixth house, guess what? That person is not going to have a lot of battles. That person is not going to have a lot of fights, generally speaking, because they're always going to look to minimize the amounts of battles that they have. Somebody who has Mars in the sixth might even make a diplomat. Somebody who's diplomatic, somebody who's like, listen, let's talk this out, because they don't want to fight, they don't want to argue, they don't want any of that. But do you want to know which planets in the sixth house make a fighter? The benefics. The benefics make fighters in the sixth house. Why? Because the benefics increase and multiply the significations of the sixth. And so it is Jupiter in the sixth, Venus in the sixth, Moon in the sixth, even Mercury in the sixth, because Moon and Mercury are oftentimes considered benefics as well. Those planets really make a fighter. You got Jupiter or Moon in the sixth house, you really like to fight. You really like to argue. You really like to battle, because those planets are increasing the significations of the sixth. And so Mars in the sixth does not make a fighter, but Mars in the fourth makes a fighter. So astrology can be a little tricky like that, but yeah. Would it apply to the Navamsha to a lesser extent? Okay, interesting. How do we determine if fourth house is strong? Oh, wow. There are various ways. You have to look at the moon, because the moon is the karaka of the fourth house. You have to look at the lord of the fourth house, if it is well placed in friendly signs. And you also have to look at what planet sits in the fourth house, and if that planet is well placed. You know, if Mars sits in Capricorn, Mars is exalted, then that's the signification. That suggests a strong fourth house. If the fourth lord is Saturn and Saturn is exalted, that suggests a strong fourth house. If your Mars is sitting in its own, if your moon is sitting in its own sign, that also suggests a strong fourth house or karaka. Mars is exalted in the fourth, and so basically take all the more positive significations of everything that we're discussing. As far as Venus in the fourth, we're gonna have to discuss that in the Venus in the fourth video. Yeah. If Mars is in the last 2 degrees, yeah, its power is attenuated, because planets are always strongest in the middle of a sign. If the sixth lord sits in the fourth, yes, it would increase all of the sixth house's significations, because first, fourth, seventh, and 10th increase all of the significations of a increase all significations. Mars in the seventh. We shall get to that video. All right, then, let us continue. The native would not be afraid of other people, not their size, not their intelligence, not their beauty, because the native with Mars in the fourth may eventually arrive at a level of inner stability where they are not bothered by that which is external to them. Naturally, being the house of the mother, it can, at its worst, suggest that one's mother was a prime competitor. One's mother may have compared one to herself or compared one to others as a means of provoking a competitive spirit within one. There could have been many arguments between oneself and one's mother. Mars is the planet of division, and so at its most negative, it could suggest separation between oneself and one's mother. But Mars is also the planet of sacrifice. Mars is also the planet of sacrifice, which is giving from a place of lack. That is different from Jupiter. Jupiter is generosity, which is giving from a place of abundance. So one's mother could have demonstrated to one just how much she battles to provide for one. On a more positive note, this position could suggest that one's mother is one's ride or die, one's best friend, because Mars is also the planet of brotherhood, sisterhood, and best friendship. Because best friendship is a proxy for brotherhood. Mars is also the planet that looks upward, meaning either pride or looking up to someone else in admiration. Mars here, if well placed, can suggest one who looks up to one's mother as a guiding force. One may be obedient to one's mother willingly and overall have a lot of respect for her. So much so that one not only allows oneself to be commanded by her, but also looks forward to her instructions and prides oneself in submitting to someone so great. Megan Thee Stallion has Mars in the fourth. Let's check that out. No, a single placement is not enough. Well, sometimes, depending on a single placement, it can. But generally speaking, no one placement is enough to make any such conclusion. Let's say Mars is in the fourth and also Saturn is in the fourth. Two malefics. Mars, which represents division and separation, Saturn, which represents negation and lack and scarcity. Yeah, that wouldn't be very good. If the fourth lord is in the 12th, it could suggest that one's mother is physically away from one. If Mars's lord is in the third, which is 12 houses from it, it could also suggest the same thing. If Saturn or Rahu is conjunct the lord of the fourth house, for example, because Rahu also represents separation and division. So yeah. Are there similarities between Mars in Cancer and Mars in the fourth? There are a few similarities, but I would not mix those two things. I would not mix them. Ascendant in Cancer, in Pusha, in the fourth house. I'm confused how it can be on the ascendant and in the fourth house at the same time. I'm very sorry for your friend Moon Cloud. All right, let's check out Megan Thee Stallion's. Megan Thee Stallion birth. Okay, over here it is C rated. Oh look, she has K2 also on the ascendant. She has Mars in Cancer and also in the fourth. How very interesting. And over here, we get the exact same thing. All right. Oh, how very interesting. Okay. Very interesting. But it's also interesting that she has Mars in the fourth, which is debilitated, with apparently no planet to save it. But she also has Sun in Dhanishta. Dhanishta is the most calculated of all Mars-related nakshatras. Whereas Mars, generally speaking, is a little bit more impulsive, a little bit more acting without thinking. Dhanishta is extremely calculated. I would almost argue that Dhanishta is the most, or among the most calculated nakshatras. Dhanishta, Uttara Bhadrapada, Jyeshta. Yeah, I couldn't decide between those nakshatras which one is more calculating. But maybe Dhanishta. But that is for a future Dhanishta video. Oh, that's beautiful. When you say your solar return is Mars in Cancer in first, with Moon in Sag in 6, I mean, yeah, a placement like that could, generally speaking, lead to a fighter. You don't know how accurate the birth time is. It's classified as C. It has a C. Oh, well, here you can't see it anymore. Over here, it has a C classification. Oh, well, look at this. Look who we have here. Da, da, da. The source rectified from approximative time. By who? Out here collecting bird charts. It's so funny how sometimes I come up here and then I just see her name unexpectedly like that. It's like, wow. Okay. If they have positive placements other places, then one could reinterpret. So, for example, let us say we did Saturn in the fourth as well. Let us say you have Saturn in the fourth, which would sometimes suggest that you were literally separated from your mother. But now let's say you have Saturn in the fourth and you also have Moon in the ninth or fifth or first, right? So, which would suggest that your mother is close to you. And so your mother would be close to you, but your mother would be very Saturnian in nature, for example. There's so many nuances that, quite frankly, I did not prepare myself to have to discuss that right now. I'm not the most spontaneous person in the world. I need to be given some time to think about things and then to write them down. Because if you just want it just like that, I couldn't give it to you. The Nishtas are extremely long-term thinkers. So long-term. And also they're very slow about, they can appear unbothered and quite slow about accomplishing their goals. Though they are very, very long-term thinkers and long-term planners, long-term doers, they don't appear like that. You know what I mean? And sometimes they do it on purpose. They purposely hide their own intelligence. That's one thing about the Nishtas. Oh no, my friend, I wasn't really going to talk about Walt Disney. I just saw that he has Mars in the fourth and I just decided to use his picture. I don't actually talk about those celebrities here. Is Mars in the fourth still related to Navamsha in the mother in Navamsha? I think according to many astrologers, they would agree. You want to know why? Because many astrologers say that the D1 is the tree and the D9 is the fruits of the tree. A lot of astrologers often say if you want to understand the most of the story, you look at the D1, but if you want to see the results of all the things that you're seeing in the D1, go to the D9. See, adding multiple things like nakshatras, like I said, I'm not very spontaneous, and so I couldn't tell you specifically what Mars in Barney in the third house could do. For Mars in the third house, you would have to watch that video. But Mars, one of the things that Mars suggests, for example, is those who defend you and those who support you. So if you have Mars in Barney, one possible interpretation could be women support you, women defend you, but not just any women, women who are confident within themselves, women who are feminine, women who love their own bodies and stuff like that. Women who are proud to be women, they're the ones who defend you. People who love their bodies and are honest about and fully embody their own sexuality, those are your team members. Those are the people that defend you. Those are the people who are for you. That's one possible example. But Mars is also your competitors. Those people could be competing against you as well. So things like that. I don't think any placement on its own is ever really good or bad. Just needs to be managed in its own way. Uttara Bhadra is very strategic, that is true. But Uttara Bhadra is not, for the most part, secretive like the Nishta is. The Nishta is very, very secretive. You would never know what it is that they're planning. Uttarashadas are very strategic. They're very logical. They're very good at planning things. But they do not have that secretiveness that the Nishtas do. Of course, having Mars in the fourth can also suggest that one's mother had a lot of Martian qualities. Why is this live panel thing not working? No, I don't know much about this. What causes the niches to be so secretive? The fact that they're extremely calculating and extremely future oriented and extremely ambitious. That's what. But I will discuss that in the Nisha video, or I will discuss that when I do the Bagalamukhi goddess live, because that's another goddess that I want to do. I just don't know whether I want to do Tripura Sundari first or Bagalamukhi first. But for Bagalamukhi, we'll be discussing the Nishta as well. All right, all right. So where were we? Okay, so naturally, as the planet of fire and knives in the house of the home, it can suggest a natural chef. But Mars in the fourth can also make someone naturally interested in chemistry, as in chemistry, we also use fire and cutting tools to mix and match and divide. Other professions include a perfumer, because making perfumes is like chemistry, a brewer, because brewing is like chemistry, a pharmacist, because to make pharmaceuticals, I mean, that's chemistry, a blacksmith or metal worker, because that is again a mixture of fire and knives and cutting tools, a glass blower, because again that is a mixture of fire and things like that. And so recall that the fourth house is also the underworld and relates to mining as well. And so Mars in the fourth would relate to all of those mining things that somehow also have a lot to do with fire as well. Right, things that you mine, but then you also need fire to refine them, and you also need sharp tools to cut them. And so it could also be diamond mining and things like that. The first, fourth, seventh, and 10th are considered the most powerful houses because they are houses of initiation. They are the beginning of activity, and they are the ones with the greatest influence on the external world. But whereas all the other houses influence the external world directly, it is the fourth house that is the most indirect in its influence. The fourth house is the house of the heart. The heart is the seat of the soul, much like how a temple is a physical heart whose counterpart is the divine. As it is even written that the church is the bride of Christ. The fourth house relates to how the inner and invisible world affect, influence, and manipulate the external world. It is in this sense that the fourth house relates to spirituality. The fourth relates to prayers, wishes, rituals, and ceremonies, and all other internal methods of influencing the external world. The fourth is the house that influences the external by way of the internal. The 12th house is perception into the invisible worlds. And the 8th is both the study of the invisible worlds, being opposite the second house of knowledge of the known world, and also a desire to control others through secret means. At its most magical, someone with Mars in the fourth might be able to cause great change in the external world by literally just getting emotional. It could be the sort of person that, When they get very angry, the person that they are angry at has something happen to them unexpectedly, all of a sudden. Like the Mars in the fourth house individual is just mad, just gets mad, and then all of a sudden, like the person that they're mad at gets into a car accident or something crazy like that. Maybe when this native is happy, the people around them suddenly get very lucky. And then when the native is sad, their sadness becomes like a dark cloud that haunts the whole house or office or classroom. This individual's emotional and mental states may have a very palpable presence of its own and literally influence its environments. Last paragraph. Because the fourth house is the most invisible house, Mars here, being the planet of control and conquest, looks for the most invisible, most covert ways of controlling and influencing people and situations. Here, at its most negative, Mars may be fascinated by developing very covert and even manipulative ways of influencing the external world. It may be fascinated by psychology, but more so as a tool of influence. It could develop an understanding of human greed, human vanity, human lust, all these deep subconscious forces that drive much of human behavior. If Mars is particularly badly placed, instead of making a truthful person, it can make a liar. Because lying is, of course, another very common way that people indirectly wish to control situations and people and things. Because one so badly wishes to indirectly influence situations that one may even choose to flat out lie. Great. What if fourth house is Aries and its ruler is Mars? Some of these significations may apply, but much less and to a weaker degree. Ooh, see, you're giving me a lot of things to work with. Mars conjunct Jupiter, and not only that, also in Ardra, and not only that, and also in Punarvasu. It's too much symbolism, which is something that I cannot do spontaneously, like I said. No, I don't think Jay-Z is Danishta. Jay-Z is not a Danishta. Jay-Z is I think he's a Maga ascendant or Purva Pulguni ascendant with Ketu in the first house. He is a Hasta moon. He is a Jayeshta sun. What Danishta placement does he have? If Mars is in the fourth house conjunct the ascendant lord, then all of these significations apply to a much more extreme degree. The fourth house is a heart that receives. The fifth house is a heart that gives. The fourth house is a house that receives, whereas the fifth house is a house that creates. The fourth house feels, the fifth house creates. So there's a difference there. Ooh, you moved. Like talking about the Capricorn version of Danishta, then the Aquarius version, the Virgo version of Chitra, then the Libra version. Those things are far, 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 far into the future. Debilitated fourth house lord, that person's mother probably suffers from a lot of illnesses, for example. Oh, thank you for enjoying it, Soul 50. Does Mars fourth say much about the house, family, and mental environment? Of course, it can suggest that one's family life was very, very competitive. There was always a lot of arguments, always a lot of strife. But if it is well placed, then your family was your gang. Your family was your ride or die. Like, there's no one that could pick on you, that your family wouldn't like get together, drive to that person's house and like beat them up. That's obviously a very extreme example. But yes, something like that. Yeah, you just have to see if Mars is well placed or badly placed. That's all. Or you just have to see the ascendants and see if Mars is a functional malefic or functional benefic. Erie Alice, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If you have Mars in the fourth house and Venus and Jupiter, then everything that I said about like the impacting your emotions literally impacting other people's lives is true. But the fact that you have Pusha is even more true, because Pusha Nakshatra also carries a lot of that power. Pusha also carries a lot of that power that whatever it desires, it magically happens. So that's a lot of influence. Oh, he has Mars in the Nishta. Okay. What is the difference between the second and the fourth when describing one's family? The fourth is specifically one's mother, one's mother's ancestors, and also the uh, feminine and maternal aspects of reality. And so the fourth house also relates to the underworld, also relates to cemeteries, um, and relates to the invisible aspect of reality in general. Whereas the second house is the house of one's parents, it's the house of one's heritage, and it's the house of like, yeah, the conjoint influence of your parents, of your family. Yes. Yes. The fourth is the house of the maternal origin of everything, really. It is also the house, some people might even consider it to be the house of like even the universe, really. Because the 10th house is the external, visible, physical world, whereas the fourth house is the internal, the vastness of the internal and invisible worlds. You know, I was gonna say something, but I want to save that because I don't want to give any. I don't want to ruin the surprise. All right, Heavenly Sims, let's give it a go. Maybe I can help you. What aspect of Poover Butterpada, for example, do you find very confusing? Because there are, of course, many things that can be said. I actually don't do Aruda Lagna. Maybe sometime in the far future I can start studying Aruda Lagna, but astrology is so full of concepts. I've never given myself the time to study Aruda Lagna. What do you mean while describing origins? The fourth is a house of the maternal or your maternal origins and your own invisible world, whereas the sixth house is a house of friends and enemies. The house of health and disease is how it's where you gather a group of people to be on your side so that you can go fight another group of people in general. Oh, I'm not sure if I have the solution for this. Sorry, Anna. I'm very sorry to hear this. Wow. You want to ask a question about Saturn in the 10th? Well, listen, go ahead. Let's see if I can answer. What is a cosplayer exactly? Cosplayer. I see. And so you're saying that it confuses you why it is a Purva Bhadrapada would be involved in something like this? I think a lot of nakshatras would enjoy costume play for like different reasons. I would have to study the specific expressions and the specific reason. I would have to study the specific individuals that are engaged in this sort of thing and to try to study the specific reasons why those individuals are involved in that. You know what I mean? Because it's like trying to say, for example, it's like trying to say which nakshatra is involved in wrestling. It may in fact be the case that one nakshatra is involved in wrestling, but different nakshatras could be involved in wrestling for different reasons, you know what I mean? So for example, Anuradha and Pushya are two nakshatras that you really find involved in the UFC, for example. Like, my channel is like 80% women, so here I am talking about the UFC. I'm not sure if I'm gonna lose views if I start talking about this, but in any case, yeah, I mean, like, Pushya and Anuradha are two nakshatras that you find very, very, and also Uttarapada. But other nakshatras are also prominent in wrestling and fighting and things like that, but like for different reasons. Pushya and Anuradha, they just overall are related to confronting demons and fighting demons and being brave and not being afraid of marching into the dark, you know what I mean? And so they're fascinated by that. But that's in future videos. Dana White. Dana White is a Pushya. Although Dana White kind of likes, personally, he doesn't fight. Apparently he was traumatized by something or the other, or I don't know what. But yeah, AA verified birth charts. So it's interesting also that he's a Vishaka ascendant, Mars in the first. Very interesting stuff. But no, but on a personal level, he doesn't fight. But he's obviously very fascinated by fighting in general. Of course, Mars in the fourth can describe somebody who's either very nationalistic or somebody who's divorced from their own nationality. Funny, both extremes, right? Either somebody who's very attached to their own nation or somebody who's very divorced from it. How do you know which is which? Simple. If it is well placed, it is nationalistic. If it is not, it's probably divided from it. It is different, but there are some similarities. Mars in Cancer and Mars in the fourth, different, but some similarities. Of course, I believe in compatibility between nakshatras. Of course. I even wrote a whole book about it. Let's go see my Patreon. I even wrote a whole book about it. Where do you see books? Shop over here. See, Sex and the Stars, which is basically a book about nakshatra compatibility. I want to do a third edition, but I am very busy with many things. My other book. And also, just to show here my updated subscriptions. So I have my $10 subscriptions for everybody. And so this is accessible for everybody So everybody can read my articles. I have like 200 articles on astrology. But now this is a different thing. This is my King's Astrologer subscribe. How do you call it? Basically, it is a membership that can only allow for like 10 people, for a limited number of people, right? And it is $600. And basically, what comes with this is I become your personal astrologer. You know what I mean? Every month, I give you reports, and also you can call me and you can text me. Like, let's say, for example, you want to hire a new employee and you have their birth data, you can quickly text me and tell me whether or not they'd be a good fit for a particular job that you have. I'll look at their chart or look at their dashas to see if their dashas correspond to a time period where they would be willing to do and do well at that particular job. Let's say you have a business and you want to launch a new product. Let's say you want to start a new business. Let's say it's somebody that you're dating that you want to check their chart very, very quickly. Whether you want a full report on that person or just me to like rapidly text you things about them, I basically become your personal astrologer. You know what I mean? But like the other list of things are down here. You know, full astrological reports about like predictions and remedies every 2 months. But then this we can also modify. It can be every 2 months, every month, or things like that. But yes, this is the retainer thing. But it only allows for a limited number of people because I can't do that for like everybody. It's too much. So yeah. Okay, interesting. You could say that, Soul 50. You could say that. You could definitely say that. Oh, where have we gone? UFC is also the only sport that I care about, to be completely honest. I think the World Cup is going on right now. I only say I think because I always see everybody going on about it, but I don't watch that. I like to see people fight and bleed. Yes, this is true. You do find unradas in sports in general. I don't see Jupiter being related to people who are very nationalistic on a personal level. I don't find that. Oil would also be a part of this. Oil would also be a part of this because the fourth house in general relates to mining and relates to the underworld, and Mars is always revealing things. It's always going into the dark and pulling things out, right? And so yeah, Mars would also relate to that. Saturn also has something to do with that as well. Thank you for buying my book, JBF MRI. Mars in the fourth can start out in life not at peace, but later in life, after fighting their inner demons, they arrive at a unique level of peace. All right, guys. This has been a great stream. Yes, DEI based on astrology. People do that. People do that. People do that. But in any case, thank you guys so much for participating in the stream. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys always for supporting me. And so, yeah. Thank you, Soul 50. Are Vishakas very drawn to astrology? That's interesting. I have Moon in Vishaka, so. Xenophobia, depending on how it's expressed, might actually be an expression of a well-placed Mars, even though xenophobia is not necessarily a good thing. Guys, I am ending the stream. I am ending the stream.